we're going to make a timeline. And timelines, as I told you, are contained within an asset, within a file on disk. The timeline, we're going to build a timeline. We're going to go to cinematics, and we're going to go to level sequence. There are other ways to make these, but this is my recommendation, is that you do it this way. You right click and you create a level sequence in this way. We're going to call this ls_3D storyboard, just so we know what that is. And we're going to save all. We're going to pop this open. A good place to put this, you can hover it in your like this. You can have it be a freestanding window. You can also dock it down here. Sometimes it's nice to have it there next to the content browser. So because this is more like probably what you're used to in other programs like Premiere or whatever else. It's timeline's usually at the bottom down there. So we want to start exploring cameras in here. So I'm going to add what is called a spawnable camera, as in a camera that only exists when the sequencer is open. It doesn't exist in the world, it just exists in the sequencer here. So I'm going to go to my add menu, go to cinematic, Cine Camera Actor, and I'm going to drag this down into my sequencer down here. And I'm going to release it. And it's going to do a whole bunch of stuff. Does everybody have something that looks like this?
So far, so good.
Yeah. Okay. Got some thumbs. That's good. Anyone else stuck? Need me to go through that again? Okay. So Franco's going to be proud of me for teaching spawnable cameras.
Do we move I'm sorry, do we move the actor in the cameras folder?
Yeah, you can drag it in there. Yeah. Yep, that's a good call. And probably also rename it. So we'll call this cam_3D storyboard. There we go. Cool. All right, so we've got a camera, and as you can see, I did a whole bunch of stuff. So our camera cuts track at the top here, we've got a camera cuts track. This means that this sequencer can actually display a camera. This is the camera below it, the camera actor. And then this camera actor also has a transform track. That means that we can position it over time. This transform track allows us to be able to animate the transform over time so that we can basically start to animate the camera. This could be a character with motion on it, or an object, any object that we're animating, but it so happens that we're animating this camera, and these tracks help us to animate just this camera. But it did all this for us. We could have built all of this manually, all of these tracks, all of these components, but because we dragged it in there, it did all of that for us. It also piloted the 3D storyboard camera, as you can see at the top there. So now I can fly this camera around and I can position it using my viewport controls. All right. So what I want to do in this piece is I want to start with a nice big wide establishing shot, something like that, a big old wide establisher. First thing to do, because in my keyframes here, I want this to just be a storyboard. So I want just still frame, still frame, still frame. I don't want motion in my camera yet. Again, same as with the light, the materials, the shapes, everything just should be super basic. I don't want to finesse anything, especially not motion or camera motion. So I'm going to start with my first frame, which I should be at frame 0. Moved my camera back here, so I'm in a sort of establishing position. Next thing to do is click on this little diamond at the top of the sequencer, and go to constant. That means that when we add keyframes, they won't smooth between one and the other. They will just jump from one to the other. That means we'll have a storyboard. It will just be still frame, still frame, still frame. If we wanted smooth keyframes, we would go to cubic, but we're staying with constant interpolation so that we can just snap from one to the other. So constant interpolation, and then I promise you I'm almost done. We're going to add the idea of keyframes in here now. So we're going to keyframe our transform of this camera. You'll see that little blue square appear. Blue square tells you it's cubic as opposed to interpolated, but blue square is what you're looking for. We're going to key all of these other things, the focus distance, the focal length, and the aperture. Now we've got our shot 1. This is our wide establishing shot. We're going to scratch forward to frame 15, let's say. Oh, let's say frame 30. In fact, let's say 45. So, well, at least a couple seconds of being on that establishing shot. Okay, so we're on shot 2. We did shot 1. Now we're on shot 2. And this is something, just to say again, this is something that will be replaced. This is a 3D storyboard. We're going to chuck this in the bin afterwards, and we're going to remake these shots in a totally different way. But just to be able to play with the shots and be able to check out our angles and our positioning of our shapes in our world, being able to play, this is a nice way to be able to play. And we are going to replace this. So this is just our scratch method we're doing right now and getting used to the timeline a little bit. Okay, so frame 45, we're going to move our camera. So what I want to do is this one, I'm going to move over here, more kind of front on, and I'm going to zoom in. But first, I'm going to key my transform, and I need to key the transform first. Otherwise, when I do anything else, it'll pop back to the place where I was just now. So now I've got my shot 2 keyframe right here. And now I want to zoom in with my focal length. So I'm going to do a little zoom in there. That's keyed that for me. The next thing I want to do is bring down my focus distance so that I focus on Quinn like that. And that's keyframed that for me as well. And then I'm going to key my aperture. Okay, so maybe I would now tilt down a little bit and just rekey my transform. It's important the order that you do this in. Do your transform first and then your focal lengths after that. But now you'll see that we can go between our wide, our medium, and then I'm going to go up to frame 90. And now I'm going to do an extreme close-up. I'm going to rotate up. I'm going to tilt up, key my transform. I'm going to zoom in further. I'm going to tilt up again a little bit, like that. Key my transform again. And then my focus distance should be pretty good. You can go to the camera at this point if you want. If you select the camera, remember this little pipette that I showed you earlier, this little manual focus distance right here. Click on the pipette and then click on we should be able to click on the object. And that will focus perfectly on the object there, the object, the beautiful model's face. So the manual focus distance, we're keying that, the focal length, and again, the aperture. So now we've got wide establishing, medium shot, extreme close-up, or close-up, if you like. So we've got 3 shots but we've done this in the most easy, quick, cheap, flexible way that we possibly could. And this is allowing us to jump straight in, play with our environment, understand the space, the scale, the layout, composition, being able to get into cameras, lensing, light. And we can also play this through. If we want to hit play, we can play that through and get a sense of timing already. This is like an animatic already. So we can play this through and say, okay, probably not long enough on the establishing shot to read it. So now if I select all of these things for shot 2 and 3, I can just move those across and then hit play again. Now we've got shot 1, a bit longer. Yeah, reads a bit better. Medium shot, close-up shot. This is starting to be able to get a sense of timing and composition and layout and light straight away. And I know this is a lot to learn today. And I know this is all of the major areas of Unreal. And we've also got into the major aspects of starting your project and starting it the right way, starting it the most flexible and easy to adjust way that you possibly could. This is going to save you so much time over jumping in and noodling with better looking stuff, focusing on the asset first, focusing on all of the details first. This allows you to take a step back and think about your story, think about the pacing, think about the framing, think about how your shots construct your story without worrying about what we all do it. I do it. I'm an artist at heart, and I start making a thing and I'm like, oh, I want to make that bit look really good right now. And they all suffer from that condition. This stops you from being able to. This puts reins on it. This allows you to focus on the most important part, which is the storytelling and the production design, which is all about the layout and the space, being capable of holding your story, and being able to really quickly say, I don't like where these trees are. They make the thing feel too big, and I want this character to feel like penned in and claustrophobic, and how this light is too bright and it feels too positive, and this is a horror movie. And now you've got all the controls here, but there's not many of them. What you want in engineering or filmmaking, creativity of any sort, is you want as few controls as possible at the beginning, so you can make big sweeping changes and just play with this stuff. Now, like if I want to make big changes to this, I want to make this dark and moody, I can go, okay, let's make it really dark, and let's take these trees here and let's move them in and bunch them in around this character, so the character feels like really, really penned in. And let's see how that feels. Maybe let's bring the canopy with the tree. That's even better. But yeah, there's totally different feel to now being in this type of environment than it was before. You know, it just allows you to make those kinds of changes and look back at it again and understand what it is you're looking at. And then the next phases that we go through will just be going through making this be your whole project. So start to play in your project, start to lay this stuff out, play with it, think about what it is that you're making. Then what we do is, once we're happy, we've gone through it and we've sat in this feeling of, well, how does this work? Does this serve me? Does this serve my story? Does this do what I want it to do? Have your story, your intention on the wall in front of you. Have your reference material up in front of you. Have all of this stuff available to you, so you can then look at what you're making here and refer back to that and say, is this accomplishing that goal? Because that's what every creative endeavor should do, is you should start. You may change things as you go, but every creative endeavor should start with a goal, with an outcome. And if you don't have a direction you're aiming in, then you get into it and you start making something that's pretty. But making something that's just pretty is fine, but really what we're trying to do here is trying to move people. We're trying to create feelings, we're trying to create emotions, we're trying to communicate an idea, and everything should be in service of that. And it's very easy to get lost on the way in trying to do that. So where this approach comes in is really, and having these pre-production materials is really in keeping us grounded in what we're trying to do. A director's job in a movie is, no matter how crazy everybody else in the set is going, and they're all like going, no, we've got to do this way, and this is happening over here, and this fire's happening, and we're like, all of that madness, the director's got to be able to sit there calmly in the middle of it and say, this is not telling the story we're trying to tell. Everyone is looking at it through their own lens, through their own set of problems or tasks they've been given by the supervisor. The director's job is to say, this is not communicating the story properly. This is not telling the story that we're trying to tell. And I don't care what you think or what you think or what you think. We need to tell this story right. We need to, it doesn't matter if it's a big movie again, or a corporate presentation, or a simulation, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. You're trying to communicate an idea. That's all storytelling is. And that's why starting here and starting with your outcome and just being super clear as you go, that everything must be in service of that outcome, still being flexible to come across new ideas as you go, but everything needs to serve that idea. That's why we start here. That's why we use this method. And I hope that you've all learned a bunch of things today about how Unreal Engine works, but also about a good approach to making a movie, making a short film, making a presentation.